Welcome to the first episode of Open Your Eyes podcast. I have been hosting this podcast in Estonia in my native language already for 4 years. This podcast was born along with a book I wrote 5 years ago when we were in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And my book was also called Open Your Eyes. And this summer, Open Your Eyes to the Cloneverse was born. This episode, I want to introduce myself, the books, and what this podcast will be about. And also to tell you my own journey and how I wrote these books and how all that knowledge came to me, what I want to share with you. So my name is Katrin Lucas. I am your host. And I want to show you first the cover of the first book. The first book is still only in Estonian language, but will be translated also very soon and available for reading. But the second book, although this one is an Estonian copy, is available in English already in Amazon, and the audiobook and the ebook are all available on my web app. I will share all the links in the description below the podcast, so if you want to read the book, then you know where and how to get it. But let's start from the beginning then, how the first book was born. And then I'm going to take you a little bit through my own journey. I'm going to show the picture of the first book again. I think you can see that there are two worlds in this book, on this book. One is a world full of death and wars and suffering, and we're asleep. And the other world is where the sun is shining, the nature blooms, people are happy again and awake. And I feel that this is the process that we have been going through for, over more than a decade, I would say. As far as I understand, then 2012 was the time when this world ended and a new cycle began. But the old world just doesn't disappear. There needs to be a time of transition, and we need to understand also what truly has happened in the world. Why is there so much evil, so much suffering, where it all began, and exactly where are we going? And in this first book, I wrote about many topics. I wrote about science, religion, medicine. I wrote about men and women, how our world is now and how it should be, about the creation of the financial system, about spirituality, the dark side of it, and also that the new world is emerging and how relationships between men and women should be instead of what they are. The second book goes way deeper. The second book is a continuation of the first book, but I think the first book for me was just getting the hang of how to write. I also share a lot more my own story here. I don't share that my own story so much in the second book, but I share more in details how I awakened and all the things that I had to go through. And the second book required for me to become even more awake, to go through a deeper healing process, awakening. For as long as I can remember, or let's say about 25 years, I have this question. why is there so much suffering in this world? Because my childhood wasn't the easiest. My relationships were very hard with my parents, later with my partners. I went through all kinds of addictions. I was constantly tired. I was emotional. I was dramatic. I did all kinds of bad things. I couldn't hold on to money. I couldn't build up anything. I was in a complete chaos, so to say. And then, but around 20, slowly, my awakening started even before, but then slowly around the age of 20, I started turning to different things. Like I went and studied Silva method. I started using my mind for creating things. I went to another training where we also learned how to create our own life. I set my goals for the next 5 years, and in 6 months they were all already done. So slowly I was constantly advancing, but I was still in suffering. I didn't feel good inside. And I started out as a lawyer. I was a business consultant and lawyer. And but in 2010, that life all ended for me. I'd already had my oldest kids. I'm a mother of 3. My youngest is 4 years old, but my older kids are 18 and 16. And their birth changed a lot to me. I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped using substances. And I quit my job as a lawyer. I started to study yoga and tantra. I started importing superfoods into Estonia. I started becoming aware of what I eat and all of those things. So that was really a big jumping point in my life. I then became a tantra teacher, a conscious sexuality therapist, a tantric therapist. And on that journey, I had to start facing self-healing. 2015 was another big leap for me. And this is what I discussed a lot in my first book of how I entered this healing phase, what happened there, what I went through. But my awakening started very early. My mom said that when I was 3 years old, I had already told her that my previous life had been also in Estonia, in the same city. I had 3 kids and a German Shepherd, and I died in a car accident the same year I was born. But all the things that happened to me in the childhood closed my memory. And in 1994, we had a major ship disaster in Estonia. That was a night when over 800 people died when a ship went down. And I was studying then in a school outside of Tallinn, then very close to the place where my grandmother lived. And I was then studying also Swedish language. And the ship went from Estonia to Sweden. And one of our teachers from the school had been on that ship. She had many kids, a husband. And that specific night, I used to sleep in a dorm there. And that specific night, I spent my night with my grandma. And I woke up in the morning and I heard about the disaster in the news. And something inside of me made me look deeper into what had happened. Something inside of me told me that it's not as we have been told. What happened to the people, because there were many people who in the beginning were in the list of saved people, but later they completely disappeared. One of my old classmates' stepfather was the ship's main mechanic, and there was even TV footage of how he was rescued from the ship. He was in an ambulance, and later he completely disappeared. She also told me that their phone was being tapped, somebody was listening in, so clearly something was off. And later people started, of course, writing books about all the things that had happened, all the things that the relatives had gone through. They had also had to go and see their dead relative. So they said that drowned, but he looked like he was completely beaten up, for example, and things like that. So for me, that was the first time that I understood that everything is not as it was told to us. And the next one was, of course, 9/11, which we all know. And I remember I had my first job then as a secretary. And we heard what was going on. We went to a bar across the street where there was a TV, and we saw how the two planes hit the Twin Towers, how they came crashing down very soon after. And then I also started to do research. I write in my first book the fact that a plane also crashed the Empire State Building many years before. But the Empire State Building did not come crashing down. It was clear that also that story is full of lies. And then I stumbled upon the movie Zeitgeist, which again made my eyes even more open. Slowly, I was discovering more and more things. I was really interested in them. I didn't watch the movie Matrix. I don't know why, but I watched a lot of other things. And then when I started my journey into spirituality, then my consciousness started expanding, and I started perceiving the world that was not visible to the eye. That was somehow to say outside of us. I had experiences with energetical beings. I started to see what is truly behind the spiritual world. I came out of the Tantra world. I saw the toxicity of it. I saw how they are manipulating people, how they're all egregores that are taking people's energy. They are giving something back, but they're taking way more. And I also started seeing how toxic those places were. And usually they were run by men who were driven by their sexuality. They were very toxic. They were abusing women. And I constantly felt that all of that was not right. As long as I can remember, when I was a child, I really loved books. I read so much in my life. When I was a child, I could read 250 pages a day. And I always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what was me to write about. What can I write about? But then over the years, when I went to a few psychics, two of them specifically told me that you need to write a book, that they see that they're being shown a book. And then the first book just came to me during the COVID pandemic. I was living then in Holland, as my latest husband, my ex-husband, was Dutch. We moved there for 2.5 years. And I sat down, and within a month I wrote that first book. And then it was time again. In the beginning of this year, I had another session with a psychic, and she's asking me, what are you doing? You need to be writing books. You need to be teaching. You're not doing your things. I said, okay. And although my life was in a pretty complicated place because I divorced 1.5 years ago, and running everything myself was not so easy. But something inside of me just pushed me to start writing the second book, and it just started coming to me again. I guess it was time. But this book started being born a few years before, I have to say. It did not that knowledge just didn't come to me this year. I'm going to take you a little bit back on this journey, how that started. 2 years ago, in August, we were in a difficult place in our marriage. And my husband wanted to do some kind of therapy with the subconscious to help our marriage, or actually he wanted me to change and me to heal so that our marriage would get better. But what happened with me within the first session was that something came up in the session that I had no idea of. And that was that I was sexually abused as a child. When I was 3 years old, I was taken away from my mom because I had some kind of a disease. And I was taken into hospital where I was alone for 1 month. And as I saw, I had been sexually abused in that hospital. I had some memories of being in that hospital. I remember seeing my mom through the glass. She later told me what it was. She could only visit me under the hospital windows and wave to me. And I felt that every time she left, I felt like I was going to die. So things were going on in that hospital that were suppressed inside of me. First 2 sessions of this healing was all about the sexual abuse that I had endured in my life. For the last 12 years, I've worked as a therapist. And I didn't get the clue. I had so many people come to me who had been sexually abused as children. And I somehow didn't get the message. But I had all the signs, if I would just look at myself, how I was. And like I said, this was like a cork came off. Something just came off. Something surfaced. And those things came up as I relaxed. I was taken to a deep relaxation. And then it was able to come up to my mind, from my subconscious, from my nervous system. And then I have to say that when this trauma came up, I realized that I had been building my whole life on this trauma. And my life also started falling apart, my marriage, everything. Within less than a year, I was separated, and I embarked on a completely new journey. But in the 3rd session, something else started surfacing. I can only call it as I saw things from my soul memory. And that is what I can say. Subconscious, in a way, is the soul's memory. First, I saw that when I was a baby in the hospital, I don't know if you know this, but in the Russian time, after the mother had given birth, the babies would be taken away from the moms. And they would be in this big room inside these plastic trolleys, beds, I don't know how you call them. And you were only taken to your mother for the feeding time. The rest of the time, the babies were there alone. What I started seeing, and later also some of my clients started seeing, that in the nighttime, the babies were taken into the back rooms, and things were being done to the babies. I think some of you have seen the movie Matrix, and do you remember that there was something put into Neo's belly through the belly button, some kind of a bug? As I understand, and some of my clients saw that they gave some kind of an injection there. But I was shown, like on the hand, I was seeing in my vision, there was like a black thing with tentacles, like a small thing. And that was being placed inside of my belly. That being inside of me started to torture me, and I was constantly crying. And my mom said that that was correct, because when we left the hospital, the doctor said that I gotten some kind of an infection. And for the next 10 months, I only cried because I had some issues with my belly. So I didn't imagine this. It was also true in the physical level. And those are energetic beings, as I understand. There may be physical beings that are put inside of us that start to affect how we feel, how we act. We start to behave in a way that is not good, and then our parents punish us, and that breaks the bond between the child and the parent. Also, when I was constantly crying and my mom couldn't sleep, she was also tired. That affected her. So everything was done to break the bond between the mother and the child, so that I wouldn't have safety, that I wouldn't have love, that my mom would be in a survival state herself. And we know when we are in a survival state, we start to react in a very different way as when we are peaceful and loving and kind and in an easy place. Now, and after that, I remember seeing my own hands covered in blood, and I was shown the cryptocurrency. And it was told to me that the cryptocurrency is, if you use it or make money with it, then your hands are bloody, because the system at one point didn't have any money to use because they used all people's money. Well, the system doesn't have any money on their own. And we're going to talk about that in the later episodes. So they invented the cryptocurrency because then people put the real money into the crypto and then the system can use it. That's how they fund the wars. That's how they funded the corona pandemic. That's how you use it. So basically, if you use crypto, you help to kill people. Yeah, I know. And so many people who say they're awake say, no, the cryptocurrency is the money for the people, for the light people. It's non-controllable. But all of those things, unfortunately, are not true. But it's not a topic I want to argue about. If you resonate with this knowledge, then it's good. If you don't, that is also fine. And then the next story that constantly started coming to me was the story of Adam and Eve. And I didn't understand why the story kept coming over and over and over again. I was, of course, shown a lot of other things also, like all kinds of things what had been happening in the universe and so on. And then I started doing seminars at that time. A lot of people came. Our first seminar was over 200 people. And I did a sequence of it because I was shown that. And I could have written the book already at that time. I thought, wow, this is really good material for the second book. But I constantly felt something. I had a key thing missing. Something really, really, really important was missing for me. I couldn't put the puzzle completely together. And then I also knew it is not the time to write the book because I wasn't certain about myself. And then my own life, of course, started to break down. That took a lot of energy. At the same time, I started doing more healing with people with sexual abuse, the same way as I had gone through it myself. And I have to say that, at least in Estonia, I think in other places also, it's massive. I can easily say it's every second person who's been sexually abused as a child. And we had even a police in the TV saying that, let's say in 1 year 10,000 babies are born. The same year 4,000 applications are filed with the police of a child sexual abuse. Now think how many are not filed. For example, I was a child whose sexual abuse was never filed. My parents even didn't know about it. I didn't remember it. That is massive. And that is such a huge trauma. And it doesn't affect just women. I do a lot of work also with men who've had the same thing. It's not just girls who get sexually abused, little boys too. And then more and more people started coming to me so I can help them to release the sexual abuse. And yes, many of them's lives started to change completely because that was something that really had to come to the surface. After that, when I separated from my husband, I took some time off and went to live with my mom for about half a year. And when I came off that relationship, I felt that I really wanted to have some time for myself and for the kids. And my youngest was then almost 3. And I wanted to rest that summer, travel around with them, and just be and integrate everything. For me, that summer was also a lot about opening up and going to the next level. And really interesting things started to happen to me. It took another year when I finally had all the pieces of the puzzle together to write this second book. And this second book starts from the beginning of how evil was born in the universe, how it took over the earth, and what has been happening since. I cover so many topics in this book. You can see it's over 400 pages. And I couldn't go into depth with all the topics like I wanted to. And that is why this podcast will be accompanying this book. So if you read that book, I take it topic by topic and I go deeper in. I started the same thing already in Estonia. It's going really well. People are really interested in this knowledge. They love it. There is so many answers here that maybe just like I was, maybe you have been looking for them. It's liberating. It gives some kind of a freedom inside. But what happened that summer? There were like two big things that I can share with you, because I'm not going to share everything, but things that are really important. At one point I was going to a concert in an island in Estonia, and on that island I was staying in an old mansion in the night, and in the night time when I went to sleep in that mansion, I was between the sleep and the wake state. And there was something constantly going on through the night, and I felt it around my heart. In the morning when I woke up, I was sad. So much pain inside of me, feeling loss, all kinds of things. So I drove on the ferry, I went home, I drove home from the ferry, and that whole time I just cried. And I felt that something was being released, something was being cleansed. And a lot of knowledge came to me that time also. The next event was interesting. I was supposed to visit one of my students. I also teach every year a therapy course, a 9-month therapy course. And one of my students who had just finished the course lives in a beautiful area in the southern Estonia. And that summer I specifically wanted to take my little daughter and just travel around with her and visit my friends. And we had already agreed everything for this weekend. And then Thursday evening, I'm having some car trouble. And I have a brand new car. This year it's going to be 5 years. So it was 4 years, sorry. It was 2 or 3 years old was the car at that time. I bought it straight from the shop. It's a brand new, expensive car. I shouldn't have any issues. I do all my regular checkups. Everything is done. And by Friday morning, I had to call in the tow truck. I called the company. They called in the tow truck. Everything goes on the warranty with the new car. And when I reached the Mercedes, I asked them to give me a substitute car. They gave me an electric car. I do not like electric cars. I never want to drive them. I don't know how to charge them. And I'm thinking, no way am I going to go 300 kilometers one way and 300 kilometers back with an electric car. And I don't know where to charge it. Maybe I'm stuck somewhere in the middle of the woods. I have my little girl with me. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to change my plans. And then I go home. And then they call me from the service and say, your car is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And I say, how is this possible? So I go pick up my car, and I think clearly I have to make other plans. There was this really nice song festival in one other Estonian countryside city. And I'm thinking, I'll take my little girl there. And my really close friends are also living 20 minutes away from there in a really nice place with all the nature. They have a whole farmhouse, they have a pond. It's really a magical place. I used to spend a lot of time there at one point. And I go there. And the first morning when I woke up there, we were sleeping in a smaller barn house on the lot. And my little girl wants me to come down on the floor and play with her in the morning. And my friends were still asleep, so I said, okay, let's play a little. And I'm playing with her, and I suddenly feel that something is calling my attention. And I'm turning there and I'm seeing a book. They had lost that year their eldest daughter. She was about 30 years old. She had just given birth to her baby. And 2 months after the birth of the baby, in January, she died. And those books that were all her books was in the barn on the cupboard there. And it was a specific book that was calling me. So I took the book out and I started looking at it. I opened it in place and I'm reading about Hyperborea. I don't know if you know what Hyperborea is, but like Lemuria, Atlantis, Tartaria, Hyperborea was also an ancient civilization. It still exists, as I understand it, but it doesn't. It's not in the same plane with us, in the same dimension, but it exists. And suddenly I see in my vision big stone gates in front of me. And I'm shown that, come in. I say, okay, I'm going in through these gates. And I enter this big stone hall. And they are showing me this big book on a stand. And then I get the understanding that I cannot read this book yet. But I was being told it's the wisdom book of Hyperborea. It means that everything that has happened is written down, recorded in that book. That is knowledge that at one point I can get access to, but I'm not ready yet. I took that book from my friends. I took it with me. I went home the next day. I read the whole book and I had so much knowledge coming in at the same time. So many books are really energetical also. And they're very special because they're also energetic. They're not just a simple physical book, but when you read, your mind it expands. And after that book, I stumbled upon another book in my mom's office, which was called Elizabeth Teich. I think the book in English is called Initiation. It speaks about a woman who was awakening also in this life and remembered her previous life in Egypt as a pharaoh's daughter and later wife, and her spiritual journey and everything. And then one day I was walking my dog on the beach and I get a understanding that I'm about to get an initiation. Soon after, I saw myself sitting in that stone hall again on a chair, and they're putting a crown on my head, and I had a golden dress and a golden cloak on me. I knew already it has nothing to do with being crowned as a queen or anything like that. Kings and queens also were completely different characters in the old time. That is also all twisted for us in the history, but we'll get into that also later. I knew that a crown on the head means being crowned with a new consciousness, new level of consciousness. And the golden cloak was my light body, was something about my light body. And it took a bit more time, a few months I think, and the final pieces for this book all came together. I completely understand the story of Adam and Eve. I understood the story of Adam and Lilith. I understood what was going on in this world. It was just like an epiphany. I cannot even say everything. All the puzzle pieces, they went into their places. Everything was fitting perfectly. And then I had already moved out from my mom's place, and then was very clearly the time to write this book. And years before, I had already so much knowledge that needed to be put in. But I was constantly also shown what I need to put into this book. And like I said, this book covers a lot of topics. I will do a new podcast every 2 weeks. Then you have time to integrate, maybe to buy the book, read the book, and follow along with the topics. But I want to explain you also what is going on in the world. When evil started ruling, then they created the Matrix. And Matrix basically is hell. It's built on fire energy, just like you can see on the cover of my book or my logo. And we need to bring back balance in this world. And that is what also happens with somebody who has gone through deep traumas in this life. They go into the extremes of the fire energy, the fear, the pain, and the suffering, agony. That's all control, that's all fire energy. Matrix is built on the extremes of the masculine energy. And in order to restore the world back to its balance, we need to bring back the feminine energy. Or the water has to start accompanying the fire to calm the fire down. And the basis of all harmonious creation is the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy. The two dualities. And I know that some people who talk about spirituality say that, well, duality exists only in this level of existence. But that is not true. I want to share with you another thing that I experienced. During the time when I was healing my trauma at that time, and when I started receiving a lot of that knowledge, I had an experience. I was, I don't know how to say, but I was taken to the level of the source, the creator, the source, how you want to call it. And I will try to put it in words what I experienced there. First, there was like a big consciousness or energy. And then that energy was breathing in and breathing out. Every time it was breathing out, creation happened. And one out breath can be millions of years. And when it was breathing in, the creation disappeared and everything starts again. Maybe these are called the cosmic cycles or something like that. But it takes a long time, time-wise. And then I was shown how at one point the source became aware of itself. And when that happened, it split into two, the masculine and the feminine. And then from the spark between the masculine and the feminine, the creation started to happen. And that is already two polarities, the masculine and the feminine. So they became two, became three, and three became six, and so on and on. And that is how the creation starts from the highest level. I was at that time taken through from the highest level to the lowest level where we live right now. In the higher level, I felt that everything matters and nothing matters. And I didn't understand that. I said, well, if nothing matters, why are we living our lives? But as they took me through each level, I reached the lowest level and I understood how actually everything matters. Everything what we do here, in the lowest level, in the smallest way, it all matters in the big cosmic game of creation. But universe is built on four energies. The upper, the lower, the masculine and the feminine, upper and lower, and left to the right. That is the meaning of the cross also. I think you can see in the corner there I have a cross behind me. But the cross that is being used now in Christianity, in religion, is not the true cross, because there life ends. The ends are open, life, so to say, falls down, death occurs, and this is the true cross. When all four energies are in balance, they are in symbiosis, they flow in the cycle like in the figure of eights all together, and they all together help keep everything in balance. They balance out each other. What happens if there is only fire? The fire just burns, starts to burn. It has no boundary, nothing will end it, nothing will distinguish it. And as long as it can go and has something to burn, it just burns, 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 and destroys everything on the way. That is what Matrix is. If inside of us the same thing is happening, if the fire burns inside of us constantly, which means we are in the energy of fight or flight. That is the sympathetic nervous system. And if we want to get that fire down, we need the feminine energy to come in. We need to relax and repose. So the water comes in and helps the fire to calm down, to be balanced out. And then if we need to move again or do something, the fire comes in again. And then we go into the resting again. And this is how all those energies work together in harmony, and then we are in balance. In the nature, inside of us, everywhere. Matrix is not in balance. In Matrix, they destroy the feminine energy. How? Why? I will get all into that in very specific details. I think you remember the witch trials. Yeah, I think you remember the Inquisition, all the things that we learned in history, which I will present to you also in a little bit different ways. But now the feminine energy is returning. The earth is going through a cycle. We are moving out of the place cosmically, and the place of darkness where we were. And I know that many people are looking for some kind of a Messiah to come and save them. From what I understand, there is no Messiah coming. And the only one who can save us is ourselves. We have to take responsibility for our lives. We have to bring back balance inside of us, and then the world changes. Think of it. If I'm in balance, I'm happy, I'm harmonious, I know how to regulate myself, and I give out to the world how I feel inside. If I am full of fear, control, domination, anger, that's how I treat my kids. They grow up the same way, they treat others that way. I do that to my spouse, I do that to everybody. What kind of a world am I creating depends on how I feel inside. Everything in this world is based on how we feel. That is what I'm saying. To create a new world, we must start feeling completely in a different way. And as you are affected by trauma in the childhood, that takes you to an internal hell, to misery, the constant burning. You live in fight or flight, you live in survival. That is what the Matrix wants. You have no relaxation, you have no energy to do anything. Nothing in your life works. And for a living being with a soul, our life is resonating with, the outside life is resonating with how we feel. And we have been made to feel in a certain way with trauma, and then later, as we go on to the grown-up life, one thing that remains is how we feel. The characters change. Your mom and dad are not there anymore, but your partners and your friends will treat you the same way as the parents did, because you feel the same way. And as I start to change my feelings inside, everything changes for me. My partners change, my financial situation changes, everything changes. When I work today with my clients, my job is to help them out of their internal inferno, or the hell. I think you know that Dante Alighieri has written a book called Divine Comedy, which has 3 parts. Inferno, it talks about hell, purgatory, how to go through the hell, and then paradise. I think that book also speaks about healing and the journey we have to take to go through hell. I think one of the best quotes I've read in a while is that the journey to heaven feels like hell, and the journey to hell feels heavenly. If we drink alcohol, if we eat sugar, if we scroll and do all kinds of these things, use substances, it feels so heavenly for a bit, but it keeps us in an internal hell. And if I want to create heaven in my life, I have to endure some pain. I have to, work out, eat healthy, face my pain, face myself, heal myself. I have to put in effort. And with my clients, that is something that I always start to do. I'm going to start helping them to come out of their internal pain and show them the way out of inferno. And then when they reach the paradise or the heaven inside of themselves, then their outside life also usually changes. And that is why those books are born, to show what truly happened in the world, how we can get out, and how the somebody who is a living being with a soul, how do they work, who they are. Because there are these two beings in this world who live side by side. And that's why this book is called the Cloneverse. There are living beings with soul, and there are clones, or beings who don't have a soul. They have a body, they don't have a spirit, and they don't have a soul. And they operate completely differently. So if you ask why is there so much narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, why there is so much violence, why everything is being used and abused, then there is your answer. I will talk very deeply about how they were born, how they were made, what does it mean for somebody to be with a soul or without one, what is the difference between a living being and the lifeless being. We gotta get into all those topics, I promise you. But in the book, I've already written those things out, so you can read it from there too. And this earth is a place for a living being with a soul. This is our home. We came to live here, and at one point the planet was taken over. Now the evil cannot come and take over anything without our cooperation. How evil works is they offer you something and you accept it. They always need your acceptance. There are two laws in the universe which are not breakable for anyone. One is the truth has to be out there for you to be seen, but nobody has said how the truth can be put for you to be seen. It can be in science fiction movies, it can be in cartoons, it can be in fairy tales, in all of these ways. That's why there's these movies or cartoons like Simpsons, there's a movie Star Wars, Harry Potter. I explain all of them also, what are they showing to us. Now, and the second rule is nobody can mess with another's free will. Now you think that no, that is not true, but no, for a living being it is true. For the soulless being, unfortunately, they don't have a free will. They were created by the system and they have to obey the system. But for you, they have to get your consent. I'll give you an example. When the smartphones came, did somebody force you to have them? No, nobody did. Does somebody force you to drink alcohol? Nope, nobody does. Is somebody forcing you to eat sugar? Nope, nobody does. And that is what I mean. Yes, they take you into a certain place where you take those things yourself, you start using them. And then you enter their realm, so to say. And I'll explain that also how it works, that we actually enter their realm and then they have some kind of an effect on us, Otherwise they don't. They cannot rule us, they cannot affect us, and that is why also we need to disconnect from the level of the matrix, the level of the system. Matrix is basically hell. The creator of matrix is Satan, and I'll talk about who Satan is. You're going to be surprised about that also. This is going to be a very interesting podcast that maybe is going to blow your mind, maybe it's going to create a lot of friction inside of you, maybe some things you don't want to hear at all. And I feel that the things that trigger me the most is where I have to look the deepest, because then there is something inside of me that is giving me a message there. And but for us, we need to bring back now the feminine energy. There is no life without the feminine energy. If the whole world is just built on masculine energy, it becomes lifeless. That is what technology basically is. And now we have entered into the time of technology, thereof AI. I do not see technology as a bad thing. I think life, nature, and technology, if in balance, can work very well together with each other. For example, just because of technology, I can sit here and share all this knowledge with you. Just because of technology, I can, for example, put my vacuum cleaner on in the night and go to sleep and rest, and the machine does the work for me. Do you want to go back to doing the laundry with your hands? No. Some things we should go back to, like food should be made with a living fire. We should have wooden stoves that we use, or with gas or something like that. But I definitely don't want to do my laundry with my hands. And things like that. And that is what I mean. These two worlds can coexist together. And that is what I said also, that this world and all the worlds are built on duality. The masculine and feminine is duality. The day and the night is duality. The water and the fire is duality. The heaven and the earth is duality. Duality is everywhere where you look. But what we need in this duality is come out of separation. One is not better than the other. We both need each other. We both need to start working together, supporting each other and co-creating. Men and women have to find balance and harmony again. But the first balance and harmony between the masculine and feminine you need to find inside of yourself. And that is your nervous system. That is the nervous system. And also the grounding and the cosmic plane. Like, if you're not grounded, you're going to fly away. You cannot do anything here in this realm. If you just constantly meditate all the time, that doesn't work. And if you're not open to the higher realms, that also doesn't work. If you're overgrounded, so to say, you become too heavy. Bringing back the balance, like you see on that cross behind me, all the four energies have to flow in harmony. And like I said, this is what this cross is also about. And I write about this cross in my book. It is called The Key of Eternal Life. I don't know if you know, but soulless beings don't die or age. In truth, we age and die because the fire burns us. We do not rejuvenate. We just keep using up everything we have inside. All our organs, our cells die at one point. If we come back to balance, then things are used and regenerated. Used and regenerating, something dies off, something new is constantly born. Death is just a transformation. But all these concepts we have to go through in another way. And this is what I say, that there is so much now to understand about this world. And bringing back balance within us will affect the world outside us. What else is happening is, as the frequency of the planet is changing, if we don't go back into the living beings we were, if we don't cleanse ourselves inside, then the frequency that is rising is too high for our bodies to hold it. In order to hold that frequency, you must start relaxing, because in a tense body where all the energy channels are clogged up, so to say, from the tension, the energy, the frequency does not flow through. And then something happens. You have a heart attack, you have, I don't know, something else happens, and people just die off. Relaxation is the key to everything at this moment, because we are too tense. But if somebody is, of course, in a complete depression, they're over relaxed and they need to bring back the fire energy. So again, as I say, you need to see what is going on with somebody. And a lot of change is gonna happen in this world. We're gonna go through a time where things might be more in chaos, where the old system is falling apart. But we need to know that we need to bring back our soul. We need to become one with our soul again. Trauma fractures the soul crystal. A living being has a soul crystal. I tried to put that picture up at one point. I drew this years and years ago when I started drawing sacred geometry. I've never drawn in my life, and at one point I woke up and started drawing sacred geometry. And I also drew that soul crystal. And when we come back into balance, that crystal will start to come back into oneness. And we have a connection with our soul again. We have a connection with our spirit again. I'll talk about all these details. How a living being has a body, has a soul, has a spirit, how they all should be working together. This is what I do with my clients. The same, I bring back their wholeness. The Trinity, the true Holy Trinity is you, your body, your soul, your spirit, which is called the Merkaba. These are the topics that, like I said, we're going to go through in this podcast. And I know it's not much, one episode a week, but we have time. And it's really important that you take this information, you really integrate it, and if it resonates with you, that you start making changes into your life. You look for help, you can turn to me, you can turn to somebody else. The internet is full of knowledge today, full of helpful tools, everything. We have all the resources to help ourselves and change our lives, and then also help this world to change. The light is coming back, the feminine energy is coming back. The living beings can be connected to the source again. It's something natural for us. For us, there is no God outside of us. The connection with our God, our mother and father, the source, is within. It is internal. And we have to turn to the source inside. For the beings who don't have a soul, they don't have anything inside. They're empty inside. And we, as we have everything, is inside. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you want to change, you have to go within. And this world is designed to keep us constantly fixed on the outside. Thank you for watching this episode. If you like it, please share it. Please subscribe to my channel. That helps the algorithm, helps to spread the knowledge, the information. And very happy if you support my work and order my books. And please ask me questions. I will answer them also in the podcast, in the next episode, if you have any questions. And I'm very happy to get feedback from you also. So thank you for listening in, and I will see you in 2 weeks.